When a 13-year-old boy in rural Mexico plays what he believes is a harmless game with his friends, he doesn't realize that at that very moment, a door was being opened. What began as innocent fun would become a living nightmare. Footsteps in the night, a presence lurking in the dark, and dreams that suffocate the soul. This is not fiction. This is a first-hand account from the one who lived it. If you think playing with a Ouija board is just a game, you may want to think again. To truly understand what happened, you have to understand who Lucas was and where this all began. In the summer of 2007, Lucas was just 13 years old. He lived with his parents on a quiet, aging farmstead nestled in the countryside of Hidalgo, Mexico, a place where time moves slowly, where the days were filled with sunlight, the nights with crickets, and the only real danger seemed to be stepping on a rusted nail or being kicked by a goat. The family wasn't wealthy, but they had land, lots of it, 150 hectares of fields that stretched far beyond the horizon. They grew wheat, barley, corn, and beans, modest crops that earned them enough to survive. Their livestock was small, a few goats for milk, some hens for eggs, and a handful of heifers for cheese, enough to live simply and humbly. Lucas split his time between school and chores, and when the work was done, he did what most boys do. He played video games, soccer, and sometimes harmless mischief with the other kids who lived nearby. But Lucas wasn't a troublemaker. In fact, he was the kind of boy that adults often said would grow into a good man. He was polite, respectful, and always tried to help his parents whenever he could. At least, until that summer. You see, the farmhouse wasn't just old, it was ancient. It creaked in the wind, the wood groaned at night, doors shut themselves, shadows seemed to move even when no one was walking. But the family never thought much of it. It was just how old homes were, right? And Lucas never felt unsafe there. Not until he and his friends made a mistake. A single decision that would change everything. Because sometimes, it's not about believing in the paranormal. It's about what believes in you. And on that warm evening in May, when Lucas and his friends sat around that board, fingers resting lightly on the planchette, they weren't just playing, they were whispering into the void, and something was listening. It was the first week of May. The heat in Hidalgo was starting to rise, and the sun hung heavy in the afternoon sky. Lucas had invited 3 of his closest friends over that day, Emilio, Rafa, and a boy named Iker. The boys had spent most of the day goofing around outside, playing soccer near the edge of the cornfields and daring each other to explore the abandoned silo behind the barn. But as the sun began to set and the shadows lengthened across the ground, they moved inside. That's when Iker pulled something from his backpack, a board. Not just any board, a Ouija board. The others laughed nervously. They'd all heard of it, of course. Who hadn't? Stories of spirits, ghosts, demons, of people going mad, of something crossing over. But boys will be boys, and none of them truly believed. So they lit candles. They dimmed the lights. They placed their fingertips on the planchette, and they asked the question, "Is anyone here with us?" Silence. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the flame of the candle nearest to Lucas surged violently, rising nearly a foot high before snapping back to normal. A loud knock echoed from upstairs. Another followed, then another. The boys froze. One of them, Emilio, snatched his hand back. "Who's doing that?" Rafa asked, his voice shaking. No one answered. Just then the front door opened. It was Lucas's parents, and what they saw made them furious. His mother screamed. His father stormed into the room, yanked the board from the table, and threw it into the fireplace. The flames didn't take it easily. For a few moments, it wouldn't burn, but eventually, it did. Lucas was grounded for 2 weeks. No visitors, no games, no fun, and no explanation. To Lucas, it all felt like an overreaction. Sure, the flames had risen. Sure, they'd heard some sounds, but that didn't mean anything. He didn't believe in ghosts. He didn't believe in demons. Not yet. Lucas's punishment ended just before summer vacation began. The days grew longer, the heat more intense, and the memory of that strange night in May faded into the background. Until one day in mid-June, something happened. Lucas was helping his father clean out an old storage shed near the far end of the property, a place filled with rusted tools, broken furniture, and forgotten crates. He was moving a pile of tangled wires when he saw it, a board covered in dust, slightly cracked at the edges, but unmistakably a Ouija board. His heart skipped. It looked identical to the one that had been burned in their fireplace weeks earlier. He stared at it for a long moment. Then, not wanting to be punished again, he tossed it into the junk pile and said nothing. That night, the dream came. Lucas was asleep in his bed when he felt something watching him. In the dream, he couldn't move, couldn't breathe. A black figure leaned over his face, faceless yet somehow staring directly at him. Its presence was suffocating. When he woke up, he was soaked in sweat. His chest hurt, like he hadn't breathed for hours. And the worst part? It didn't stop. Every night, the same dream, the same figure, the same choking fear. Then came the other things. Small things at first. Objects he'd left in one room appearing in another. Things going missing, then showing up days later exactly where he'd already searched. Lucas thought maybe he was just tired. Maybe he was stressed. But deep down, something felt off. It was as if the house itself had started to notice him. The corners of rooms felt darker. The mirrors seemed slower to reflect. Something had returned. And whatever it wasn't done with him yet. It wasn't long before things escalated. On June 22nd, Lucas went to grab something from under his bed and froze. There, half sticking out from the shadows, was the Ouija board, the same one, cracked, dusty, the one he had thrown out. His skin turned cold. Without thinking, he grabbed the board and ran downstairs. His parents were in the kitchen. Lucas slammed the board onto the table and yelled, "You put it there, didn't you? You're trying to scare me." His father looked stunned. His mother's hands began to tremble. "We burned it, Lucas," she whispered. "You saw us." "Then how is it back?" They stared at each other in silence. That night, his mother lit candles and walked through every room, whispering prayers and burning incense. But it was too late. Lucas began to hear voices. Not just whispers, but his own name being called from beneath his bed. Sometimes he would be sitting alone and hear footsteps behind him. But when he turned, there was nothing. He started waking up with scratches across his arms and back. Sometimes faint, sometimes fresh and bleeding. His mood changed. He became irritable, angry, withdrawn. His parents thought it was puberty, a rebellious phase. But this wasn't normal. Lucas wasn't just changing, he was slipping. His eyes began to look hollow. His voice cracked in odd moments. And sometimes, in the reflection of the window, he swore he saw someone standing behind him. Someone tall, still, watching. The fear had moved in, and it was only just getting started. It wasn't long before things escalated. On June 22nd, Lucas went to grab something from under his bed and froze. There, half sticking out from the shadows, was the Ouija board, the same one, cracked, dusty, the one he had thrown out. His skin turned cold. Without thinking, he grabbed the board and ran downstairs. His parents were in the kitchen. Lucas slammed the board onto the table and yelled, "You put it there, didn't you? You're trying to scare me." His father looked stunned. His mother's hands began to tremble. "We burned it, Lucas," she whispered. "You saw us. Then how is it back?" They stared at each other in silence. That night, his mother lit candles and walked through every room, whispering prayers and burning incense. But it was too late. Lucas began to hear voices. Not just whispers, but his own name being called from beneath his bed. Sometimes he would be sitting alone and hear footsteps behind him. But when he turned, there was nothing. He started waking up with scratches across his arms and back. Sometimes faint, sometimes fresh and bleeding. His mood changed. He became irritable, angry, withdrawn. His parents thought it was puberty, a rebellious phase. But this wasn't normal. Lucas wasn't just changing, he was slipping. His eyes began to look hollow. His voice cracked in odd moments. And sometimes, in the reflection of the window, he swore he saw someone standing behind him. Someone tall, still, watching. The fear had moved in, and it was only just getting started. It started with a single moment, a blank space in his memory. 1 minute he was turning soil near the east fence line. The next, he was waking up in the middle of a forest thicket, sunlight burning his skin. His arms and legs were tangled in thorny brush. Small cuts ran down his chest and neck, and he had no idea how he got there. That thicket, it was over a kilometer from where he'd been working. It didn't make sense. Lucas stumbled back home, exhausted, filthy, disoriented. When he stepped through the kitchen door, his parents stared at him, shocked. "Where were you?" "It's been 3 hours." Lucas had no answer, and that was just the beginning. The blackouts started coming more frequently. Sometimes he'd lose only a few minutes. Other times, hours. He'd wake up in barns under trees, once even curled up beneath the dining room table, his body covered in dirt, with deep scratches across his lower back. His clothing was often half removed, and always, there was this stench, a wet, metallic, decaying smell. But nothing compared to what came next. One morning, Lucas awoke in the goat shed. His hands were red, his shirt was stained. A baby goat lay beneath him, bleeding from the back legs, trembling, gasping for air. In his hand, a knife, its blade speckled with blood. He didn't scream, he didn't cry. He ran, through the fields, across the road, past cars, homes, people who shouted after him. He ran until he couldn't feel his legs, until the world blurred. When authorities found him 2 days later, he had traveled nearly 25 miles, dehydrated, delirious. That's when Lucas finally broke, and he told his mother the truth, everything. After hearing Lucas's confession, his mother sat in silence for a long time. Then she began to cry, not just out of fear, but guilt, because somewhere deep inside, she had known something was wrong, but she had been too afraid to admit it. That night, she and her husband Hector contacted the local church. Within days, Father Benito Jose Carrera arrived, a serious, soft-spoken man who had seen things few dared to speak of. He spent several evenings observing Lucas, speaking with him, praying quietly while holding a crucifix close. Then he confirmed it. Lucas was not just sick, he was being possessed. By what, the priest could not say, only that it was parasitic and deeply malevolent. Permission was granted to conduct an exorcism. On the 1st of September, the Vea family prepared their home. Friends and relatives gathered, candles were lit, holy water was poured into bowls and placed in every corner of the house. Lucas was tied to his bed, not because they feared he would escape, but because they feared what might come through him. What happened that night? Lucas barely remembers. His body contorted, his voice distorted. He spoke in a tongue he didn't know. He laughed in tones that were not human. At one point, a picture frame exploded off the wall. At another, the lights flickered violently, then went completely out. For hours, the priest chanted. He placed crosses on Lucas's head, pressed sacred salt into his hands, demanded the spirit give up its hold. Just before dawn, it ended. Lucas remembers one thing, a sound beneath the bed, then scraping claws across the wooden floor. Everyone in the room jumped. Lucas turned his head and saw it, a black, oily, legless creature crawling with spindly arms toward the doorway. No one else would ever confirm seeing it. His parents deny it to this day. But Lucas knows what he saw, and he prays he never sees it again. After the exorcism, Lucas slept for nearly 3 days, and when he finally woke up, something felt different. The shadows no longer whispered. The air felt lighter. The house was quiet again. There were no more blackouts, no more voices, no more dreams, and the Ouija board? It was never found again. Before leaving, Father Benito approached Lucas. He held out his hand. In his palm was a small, round wooden disc, no larger than a coin. On it, a single word had been carved. Protect. Never lose this, the priest said. Keep it with you, always. Lucas nodded. He wore it around his neck that same day, and he's worn it every day since. He still doesn't believe in religion, still considers himself an atheist, but he never lets that pendant leave his body. Except on the nights he forgets, the nights he leaves it on the kitchen table, or forgets it in his coat pocket. Those are the nights the dreams return. Not always, but enough to make him wonder. The face comes back, black, featureless, hovering just inches from his own, watching, waiting, trying to come back. Lucas doesn't tell anyone this. He laughs it off. But when the lights go out and the wind howls through the trees outside his window, he clutches that pendant tight against his chest and he whispers one word over and over again: protect, protect, protect. Some people say the Ouija board is just wood and paint, a toy, a party trick. But Lucas knows better, because he didn't believe either. Not until something answered back, something ancient, something hungry. He never asked to open a door, but curiosity doesn't care about intention. And once the door is opened, it doesn't always close behind you. Maybe you're a skeptic. Maybe you're just like Lucas once was. Maybe you'd sit down at that table, light the candles, and whisper into the silence, "Is anyone there?" But are you prepared for the answer? Because some things want to be found, and some spirits don't play fair. So the question is, would you dare? Would you touch the board? Would you ask the question? Would you let it in? Brief, eerie silence. And if one day you wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, with the feeling that something is breathing just inches from your face, ask yourself, did you forget to wear your protection? Or worse, did something finally find its way back? If you made it this far, you're one of us now. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Night of Horror for more real nightmares, twisted tales, and the things that whisper in the dark. Hit the bell icon so you'll know when they return. And remember, not every game has rules. Some just have consequences.